The endocrine system. We've already looked at one communication system within the body, the nervous system, and we made the point of saying that it was fast. It's predominantly dealing with responses that need to be rapid, but then can be turned off relatively quickly as well. The second system we need to consider is the endocrine system. This is the chemical communication system within the body and consists of a collection of glands that produce and secrete chemicals called hormones. By secrete, we mean produce and discharge a substance. But you should think of this as a substance that has a function, as opposed to excrete, which refers to waste matter. Rather than a dedicated system of nerve fibres, the endocrine system moves hormones around the body via the blood supply, which of course moves other things as well. Because of this, endocrine activity tends to be slower in activating than neural activity, but also tends to act over longer periods of time. It's important that you don't think of neural and endocrine systems as separate. They work together, and some mechanisms can have electrical and chemical communication components. When we look at the body's response to stress, we will see how the two systems work together in an integrated biological response. Let's consider the major components. The pituitary gland. We've said in a previous lesson that this is sometimes called the master gland and acts to regulate much of the chemical activity of the body. It's also a good illustration of how neural and endocrine systems are integrated. Let's look at it a bit more closely. It's attached to the hypothalamus by the pituitary stalk. The hypothalamus has direct neural connections through the pituitary stalk with the posterior pituitary gland. This results in the pituitary producing hormones such as vasopressin, which is important for fluid regulation and kidney function, but which may also play a role in brain regulations of social behaviour and even pair bonding and maternal responses to stress. The posterior pituitary also produces oxytocin, which plays an important role in pair bonding and childbirth processes. The hypothalamus can also produce its own chemical messengers, which activates the anterior pituitary gland, thanks to the very rich blood supply here. Here we will find hormones like luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone, which are important in reproductive cycles, and ACTH, which is important in our stress response. There are other endocrine glands, both inside and outside of the central nervous system. These are tissues that produce and secrete hormones that regulate various physiological activities. For example, the thyroid gland produces thyroxine, and this is essential for the regulation of metabolic rate and activities. The pineal gland produces melatonin, and this is critical in the regulation of biological rhythms such as sleep-wake. Endocrine regulation. The endocrine system is regulated by a collection of negative feedback systems, which work in much the same way a thermostat acts to try and regulate the temperature of your central heating system. Let's consider a general, then a specific example. The hypothalamus is ideally placed to measure chemical activity in the blood and know if action is needed, just like the thermostat in your room knowing if the heating needs to go on or off. The hypothalamus instructs the pituitary to take action. Now, we know this could be neurally or hormonally, but let's say it's done it hormonally for now. It'll produce a releasing hormone. This is an instruction to the pituitary to release something. The pituitary will then release a stimulating hormone, which is going to travel through the bloodstream until it reaches a target organ. This will act at a specific receptor site in much the same way that a neurotransmitter will at a postsynaptic neuron in the nervous system, and it's a molecular lock and key mechanism. The target organ then produces the hormone in question, and circulating levels of that hormone in the body go up. The hypothalamus detects these rising levels and switches off the releasing hormone. A really useful specific example of this mechanism is the menstrual cycle. Again, starting with the hypothalamus, this detects a lowering of circulating estrogen and produces GnRH, gonadotrophin-releasing hormone. Don't be scared by the terminology, it's just a code. It's a releasing hormone, so we know it's going to instruct the producer to release something. Gonadotrophin means goes to the gonads, which in this case means the ovaries. So it's the hormone that's telling the pituitary release that stuff that goes to the ovaries. And so it does, releasing chemicals like FSH and LH. Once these arrive at the ovaries, they act, among other things, to raise the level of estrogen. The hypothalamus detects this rise in circulating estrogen and turns off the GnRH. This in turn leads to a lowering of LH and FSH, which in turn leads to a lowering of circulating estrogen, which is detected by the hypothalamus, which then turns on the GnRH again, and so the cycle repeats. One last thing we can consider here is that the timings and levels of hormone production are critical to normal functioning, and therefore abnormal levels can lead to dysfunctions. For example, diabetes is caused by low levels of insulin production in the pancreas and can have a range of associated problems. Cushing's disease is caused by high levels of cortisol produced by the adrenal glands. This can result in problems like high blood pressure and even depression. Addison's disease is caused by low levels of cortisol and is associated with a range of problems including fatigue, weight loss, low blood pressure and hyperpigmentation, darkening of the skin.